Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a short break as useful to stretch the legs a bit. We have now come to the last segment in today's program, where we shall have two very interesting panel discussions, mainly driven by technology and the changing shape of our supply chain. Our first panel will be moderated by Dr. Shireen Nasser. Dr. Shireen Nasser is the Global Director of Logistics Studies at the Heriot-Watt University Dubai campus. She's also the Director of various MSc programs at the university, which cover MSc Logistics and Supply Chain Management, MSc in Operations Management, MSc Maritime Logistics and Business, MSc in Business Analytics and Consulting, International Masters in Industrial Management. And these are very, very significant programs in our youngsters today. Dr. Shireen's main research interest is sustainability and supply chain resilience. She has published numerous research papers and book chapters in areas such as automotive recall, risk and social sustainability, supply chain performance, sustainability maritime logistics, supply chain information security, contemporary disruptive business applications of blockchain technology, smart cities, and implementation challenges. So Dr. Shireen Nasser is very well qualified to manage or to moderate this next panel, which is about smart cities, a foundation for Industry 4.0, and how AI and automation will impact the economic landscape and capabilities in the region. Dr. Shireen Nasser, welcome to the event. Very much appreciate your time. And also, I want to thank you again for being a co-chair and supporting and organizing this event, which has taken a lot of time and effort, but certainly we very much appreciate your input and the support of yourself and also of Heriot-Watt University. So, Shireen, I would like to ask you if you'd like to introduce your panel and look forward to your discussion.
Thank you very much, Joe. I think our effort paid off, and we are enjoying the event. So I'd like to first say hi, everyone. As a co-chair of the conference, I would like really to thank you for joining our event today, and hope you continue enjoying it. I'd like to invite you and welcome you to our panel discussion today on smart cities, a foundation for Industry 4.0, and how AI and automation will impact the economic landscape and the capabilities in the region. I think we are delighted as the panelists, all of us in the panel, because our panel came after great discussions today on both digitalization and sustainability as hot topics. So hope our panel will add to this fruitful discussion while considering the perspective of smart cities. We got a brilliant lineup of speakers for you today with some really interesting and exciting insights on the panel's topic. So it gives me a great pleasure to welcome our panelists today. I will start by introducing Stephanie Krishnan, Research Director, IDC Manufacturing Insights, Asia Pacific. And we also are happy to have Dr. Anas Batao, who's the Director of the Center of Excellence in Smart Construction at Heriot-Watt University, Dubai. Welcome, Anas. And last, but by no means least, Mr. Walid Khouri, Group Managing Director, ALS Logistics Solutions. Thank you all for accepting and allocating the time for our panel today. So to start our discussion on the topic today, I would like to start with the term of smart city. We all maybe use smart cities or talk about it, but we might not be actually familiar with what does this term mean. So it was a phenomenon over the last years, as will continue to be. So my understanding of the main reasons of the emergence of smart city initiatives are related to creating a sustainable model for cities and preserve the quality of life of their citizens. Okay, so I would like to start with you, Dr. Anas, based on your area of expertise in smart cities, to give us some or share with us your definition of a smart cities concept and how you evaluate the progress on the current smart cities plan in the MENA region, considering obviously the impact of COVID-19, which we can't really ignore in any discussion. Over to you, Anas.
Thank you, Shireen, and thank you to the organizers for the invite. That's a very tricky question to start off with, to be honest. It depends where you sit in and which corner you're looking at as smart cities. The concept of smart cities have evolved and developed over the years, but the original definition or the concept of smart cities, arguably you can add sustainability and security and etc. with it as well. But a smart city is a city that's innovative by using information and communication technologies as what we used to call ICTs, and the means of the information that's gathered from the technology to improve the quality of life in basic terms. Obviously, that means a lot of things, especially when you say quality of life, what it means. We, within the Center for Excellence in Smart Construction, we look at it from how can we take this data and information to make sure that we can design and develop and operate cities in a better way. But as I said, it all depends on where you're looking at it from and which angle you're involved in the smart cities.
Yeah, I think we are in a hub, talking about UAE, it's a hub of innovation when we come to technology. So if we consider this context and just, apply the question to this context for UAE, so how do you see where we are in terms of smart cities, maybe how to evaluate the level we are in here in Dubai in terms of smart cities context?
Well, it's the smart cities in general, the performance to measure smart cities, or the KPIs, if we would say, it's usually to do with connectivity, mobility, and the way, the moment you see health and safety, education, even the built environments, e-governance, the energy sector, the water, the waste, the logistics, utilizing technology. That's usually, in lame terms, you're aiming towards smart cities, and that's usually the performance measure or measurement indicator. Now, there is a lot of KPIs and measurement indicators out there. There's a lot of efforts that's been driven through ISO and other entities, and even different countries have their own KPIs according to their strategies, etc. It's almost impossible to measure how smart a city is in general, because every city tackles, as I said, smart cities in a different way. Every industry tackles smart city or smart work or a smart industry in a certain way. Therefore, it's really difficult to say these are the KPIs or these are the measures of indication or performance. We see this in Dubai, as you mentioned, or UAE in general, or even the region, where it starts off by obviously, first of all, making sure that we have the right means to connect, the right means to collect the data and analyze data. And then we move on to the next stages of smart cities, where we actually can leverage some of this data that we gather in order to, as I said, design and operate and build our future cities and know how to manage the cities and the data within, and therefore provide a safe, sustainable, secure, and smart digital environment for citizens and the government.
Okay, so just briefly, do you know any connection of the smart cities KPIs, although you mentioned that they are not standard, different KPIs, but if I consider the UAE context here, because even I can't consider MENA region because it's still different, if I just be limited to UAE, do you think these measures can impact the industry somehow, or logistics or manufacturing?
Absolutely. That's the way it should be. As I said, every city would have their own strategies, should have their own strategies, and should be different from what you see in Dubai than what you should see in Abu Dhabi. And this is something we see and touch. And therefore, when you talk about cities, you talk about the industries within each of the cities. So that will have a great impact on the built environment. We'll see that it will have a great impact on logistics. It will have great impact on aerospace, etc. So it all depends on what the strategy of the city is and how they're trying to achieve it. It depends in terms of timeframes, it depends in terms of ways that they want to implement, but also there could be limitations, because if during my time working for an international firm, the way we would indicate or or approach smart cities or the smart initiatives would be different from one country to another, or one region to another. That will all depend on limitations that some of the governments may impose, not because they want to, because they go ahead and create a solution for themselves, which is a smart city platform, and then you have to limit yourself to make sure that you can meet the targets and requirements in that, which is another topic and the indication that we need to have what's called an open data platforms, etc. But yes, it's in general terms, there is KPIs that are set for every single country or city that's trying to achieve smart cities, and it could be different from one to another.
Thank you. So to build up on in your feedback on that, so I just want to discuss. We need to understand the connection between the smart cities and smart manufacturing, logistics, or supply chain. So, Stephanie, could you please tell us what are the key features or characteristics of smart manufacturing and supply chain that demonstrate that interconnections and interdependency between smart city smart city initiative and obviously smart businesses, which support businesses in achieving their goals?
Thanks, Shireen, and thanks to everybody for their time. In looking at that, I guess, from an IDC perspective, our view is that a smart city is one that embraces technology to drive urban transformation to meet social, financial, and environmental outcomes. So it's an outcomes-based view of modernization, and digitalization is central to the advancement of the state, the province, the city, etc. Now, this rapid pace of digitalization or information sharing and technology means that businesses and residents will have rapidly changing needs when it comes to customer services and experiences with the government. And it's these needs in dealing with the government of the city that need to be reflected in achieving the outcomes for manufacturing or supply chain organizations. When we look at these sort of outcomes, we're looking at, primarily, we could talk about four, for example, outcomes that support businesses in achieving these goals. So transformation infrastructure is a key one. A lot of the times when we look at this, we often think of it from a physical perspective, but it also includes the informational. And that's quite key in terms of information provision to businesses to allow them to do things like, plan routes, etc. Ecosystem connectivity is another one where we're able to connect to organizations in the ecosystem within the city. And this is to enable things like, being able to use smart lockers for drop off and having that connectivity, which is something that happens in Singapore and I've seen emulated in other cities. Smart solutions can also make local labor markets more efficient. So either through enabling hiring capabilities or looking at the movement of people around the city to make sure that they're able to participate in the labour market for supply chain and manufacturers, and also being able to slightly lower the cost of living, which it can be an outcome of smart cities, which allows, attracts people to the city to live, and therefore you get a more attractive labour pool. And of course, the health and safety, an environment that reduces emissions, will be doing things like alleviating chronic conditions, which of course is going to affect workforce health. So in terms of the relationship between the city and the industry, there's quite a few things that are complementary and certainly necessary there.
Yeah, I agree with what you mentioned, and I think smart cities is a reflection of maybe the level of also advancement in industry in the country. So they are connected, so innovation can predict the level of innovation in businesses and industries.
Well, it can be quite symbiotic in that respect. So you can have organizations that come to towns or cities that do actually help lift the innovation through their demands and the way that they either are, supported by the government and they inspire the government for change. But it can also be the other way around, where you have governments that do actually attract a lot of organizations that might be quite innovative because they do have that, the city itself is quite capable. So that can be quite symbiotic in that fashion.
Oh, that's an interesting point. So we can expect the gaps here.
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so my next question to you, Walid. When discussing technology, it is quite obvious that AI and automation are game changers and play a huge role in changing business practices. And when we talk about changing business practices, this is actually how we describe the fourth industrial revolutions with new business practices. So what are your thoughts on how AI and automation impact the economic landscape and capabilities in the MENA region?
Thank you, Dr. Shireen. The artificial intelligence is already changing the world as we know it, data collection, the big data, etc. And we know that it's empowering people by facilitating advances in logistics, advances in healthcare, advances in education and transportation, of course, in the logistics industries. So we expect this to continue its growth as well. We are working in our systems that we provide to our customers, such as all the 3PL, 4PL, 2PL airlines, airports. We interface our machinery with their main frames to provide as much as we can information to improve the process, to improve to make the speed, to make it faster, and to deliver the data required for them to make faster solutions, faster decisions. I can give you an example on the UAE. Dr. Anas was talking about UAE. UAE has invested in artificial intelligence really heavily recently. They say in billions of dollars even, by several billions, I would say. And it's the biggest region investor in the artificial intelligence. Saudi Arabia would be the second one. And I think that the artificial intelligence latest report is that the bulk of the investment went towards the social media and Internet of Things. The UAE wanted to connect the city completely and make it, as Dr. Anas said, and Stephanie also, they wanted to make it all as just one machine learning and smart technology solution altogether. So I think that artificial intelligence is here. We cannot, it's improving every day. It depends on the solution providers. It depends on the cities, the smart cities, how they can use this data, collect the data, and improve the life of everyone.
Okay, yeah, I think it might be helpful if we reflect also on the recent disruption with the pandemic. How did you see the situation? Did you observe the acceleration towards these smart solutions, or this? What's your input here, please?
Yes, everybody was sitting at home and ordering things. I mean, I don't know if we can really take the pandemic as a real, let's say, as it really moved it faster. I would say 18 to 20, as according to some reports in the UAE, only 18 to 20% of companies are now considering really investing in artificial intelligence. I'm talking UAE-wise, of course. It did make data collection much better. It did make connectivity. I mean, you can order now a pizza and you can exactly know for which meter your pizza is. So I don't really know. This connectivity, yes, it has helped, but it's not really the drive for technology, because the biggest companies did not really invest in infrastructure. So they mainly invested in delivering services to people who are sitting at home and only requiring the services. I can see Stephanie is agreeing with me, and Dr. Anas and yourself as well. I'm not so sure what's your point on that. I don't think that the last pandemic has really helped us improve a lot. It just only helped us collect more information from the people, knowing what they like to do, when, what, etc. But it did not really invest a lot into the industry, which is something that in fact affects us a lot.
So it was mainly driven by the disruption, not by a plan and a strategy by the business. So it was just try to mitigate the risks they were facing with the pandemic, more like.
I believe so, Dr. Shireen. I believe so, yes. I leave to my other panelists to tell us what they think.
I would like really to get your input on that as well, Stephanie and Anas. Especially, I'm not sure, Stephanie, do you see after the pandemic now we are with the pandemic like nearly 1.5 years now? Do you think any change in this in the approach or strategy for adapting technology or transformation?
Yes, and yes, but maybe not as much as we think. And a lot of that is because there's a lot of foundational aspects that need to be put in. When it comes to technology adoption, manufacturing and supply chain and government to a certain extent tend to be a little bit more resistant to change. There's been instances where cities like Dubai and Singapore are quite heavily invested already in a certain number of technologies. They were early movers in adopting many technologies. And so as such, they tend to have a technology debt. And what that means is they've already invested quite heavily in a certain technology. With sensor technologies and these sort of capabilities have been invested in for quite some time in both these locations. And as a result, there's a bit of reluctance to move. However, with the pandemic, disruption starting back from, Tianjin port explosions in China, which caused, issues with supply chain throughput. You look at the pandemic, you look at the trade war, you look at the Suez Canal, there is a recognition that disruption is prevalent. And so organizations are starting to get their house in order. And while, for a lot of organizations, I think AI and machine learning is the end goal to an extent. I don't think they're there yet. So we're seeing a lot of movement in with regards to cloud adoption. So being able to facilitate, Waleed was talking about the taking the orders from people at home, and it's also taking orders from, other people in businesses at home. It's not just individuals ordering pizza, it's individuals ordering parts for their supply chain from home. And so being able to extend those remote operational capabilities to organizations, and then the city's requiring and the government's requiring to have that infrastructure in place that's going to allow that level of connectivity. And so in some cases, for some cities, there's been a massive movement in getting that done. Now you turn to other countries in the region where they didn't have the infrastructure and the technology investment that Dubai and Singapore had, then what they're having to do is catch up. And what will result, though, is because they're not going to be investing the same technology that we invested in, 20, 30 years ago, they're going to leapfrog. And this is going to spur Dubai and Singapore to make some investments that will allow them to keep up with what the neighboring cities are doing. And we're starting to see that happen. So it's quite an interesting, I think disruptions are prevalent. I don't think they're going away. I think COVID is just one example that has hit us all quite personally. But I think that what organizations are starting to do is lay down foundational technologies that's going to allow them to get their house in order to prepare for AI and machine learning.
So simply you are saying that disruption and uncertainty became a new normal. And these are the two things which drive business initiatives and the development plans now, rather than the genuine, is not coming by the business to improve, but just to mitigate the disruption around the business. So reflecting on the gaps, Stephanie mentioned, Anas, about, you might have really country like here in UAE or Singapore, which is highly innovative at country level, we say innovation hub, and we might find gap with how industry doing in terms of digital transformation. So in relation to this gap, how do you see, maybe, I'm not sure if smart cities or this level of innovation at country level can at certain point force businesses to change? Like when it became a constraint for them to continue with their current practices, they have to adjust or adapt to the other, initiatives at country levels related to smart applications.
I'd like to say instead of force is support them to change, because in a way there is a lot of limitations, and I mentioned some of them earlier, and there's a lot more limitations, and there's a lot of changes that happen. There's a lot of disruption, as Stephanie mentioned, in terms of COVID, but we all know COVID because it touched us personally, but there is a lot of other disruptions that happen around the world that will continue to happen. And the best way to really achieve some positive outcomes from it, not to have solutions, as Waleed said, just temporary solutions, and without really tackling it from the foundation, tackling it from the there's a lot of issues with smart cities, there's a lot of limitations, that's what I'm trying to say. And these limitations need to be addressed, whether it's to do with data protection, whether it's to do with the integration of data, whether it's to do with how can we analyze the data, all the way to how can we utilize that data to support businesses. And these are the kind of limitations that we have. And once the governments such as UAE and Singapore, and that's why they're good examples, they go to these kind of issues and trying to solve them and have solutions for these issues, that's when we see industries reflecting towards them and reacting in the right way. I wouldn't say it would be in a way that you'll feel enforced to do that, because in a way that if you don't, you lose out on opportunities. And we all know what happened to organizations that don't take opportunities, and they don't exist anymore, pretty much, even though they were big players in the markets. So it's a matter of, I think, the governments, for them being strategic and tackling the smart city implementation from the foundation, as we would call it. It allows industries to be more innovative and allow them to know how to react to these disruptions, whether it's COVID, whether it's issues to do with logistics, whether it's terror attacks, whatever it is that it could be. There is ways for industries to benefit from it and to achieve better by having the right foundation in place.
Okay, thank you. I like using support than forcing. Just following your logic with supporting industries to implement this initiative. This is a question for all of you. I'd like your input. Do you think there is any mechanism to enhance the alignment between smart cities initiatives and business initiatives? I'm focusing obviously on manufacturing, logistics, supply chain. Do you think of any mechanism that can help in enhancing this and supporting in businesses at the same time?
I'll start if that's all right. Some of the things that we see working is the use of or enforcement of policies at governmental level. So often you see massive change when you look at things like electronic signatures or electronic data collection, etc., allowed by government departments. Where you have government departments that are still requiring a physical signature, then things are going to be restrained by that. And as the government is able to, the city or the government processes are able to advance, then you are going to see businesses required to keep up with that. So, for example, when you require electronic bills of lading or electronic customs permits or e-invoicing, letters of credit going, electronically, then this is actually going to require all the businesses in that particular ecosystem, be it a city or a country, to keep up. Right, and conform, and that's generally one of the big impetuses for change. Is basically saying this is the way that the government is mandating that you do it now, and that's when things do change.
Okay. Any input from Walid or Anas? I have a question related to this. If you don't have it, okay. Yeah, go ahead, Walid.
Yeah, I think the government should give an initiative and maybe some support, because we haven't, even during the COVID, the support that we got from the government was mainly safety and security support. If the government would invest a little bit more into putting things together and to putting the stakeholders together to work collaboratively, to share the data, or somehow putting the vendors, the cloud vendors, the manufacturers, and other stakeholders that are really involved in all this data collection and all that to work together. If there is a body that is, we don't want to force them, as Dr. Anas said. If they give them an incentive, if you do this, we will give you, we don't pay taxes in Dubai, but they'll give you some incentives and some better support. Then to simplifying, all the efforts of everybody, instead of everybody working separately, if they can join them all together, make somehow a collaborative work together to share the data, mix and match and compose the apps and services, etc. This is my point in it, to be honest.
Okay, that's a very helpful, actually, your point. Anas, if you have an input, please share, but I have also a question related to what Stephanie said to you. So we say that digital technologies and data are the fuel of smart cities, right? Finding a fair balance between data protection and innovation could be challenging. So as a result, we might see digital technology or smart city law is essential for legal implementation of smart cities, right? So how do you evaluate the progress on these aspects related to smart city law and as linked to what Walid mentioned, might also impact businesses in terms of incentives, or could be, again, by law, they need to do something?
Well, that's exactly what I meant by foundation. That's one of the things, and what Walid and Stephanie mentioned as well, that these are all part of the foundation that needs to be put in place before we expect industries to evolve and innovate and etc. Unfortunately, a lot of governments, we see this in in a lot of countries out there, they tend to just focus on e-governance. They don't really, as Waleed mentioned, they don't really share the data. They just want to collect the data. And sometimes they ask to entities to provide the data in certain formats, etc., and they don't share it back. They use it to enhance the governance, etc., which is great. But it's a matter of just sharing these kind of data and etc. However, there's also always limitations. These limitations stand in a way of data sharing, the issues to do with security, and as you mentioned, data security and cybersecurity, and etc. Well, there's a lot of effort that's been done from a technology perspective. There's a lot of effort that's been done from a legal and policies perspective, as we all know. Some of the policies been initiated for data protection, etc. But we still have people's mentality and mindset as well. And that's these are the kind of stuff that needs to be tackled from the foundation and make sure that we can realize that the real benefits and innovate as we want to as part of a smart city. Now, these limitations exist and need to be addressed from different levels. As Stephanie mentioned, you still got government entities that want you to do paper signing. That's not shouldn't be a topic that we discuss anymore. But it's to do with security. You need to have printouts. You need to, even in construction, for example, we would build a smart building, and everything is digital twinning, etc. But then when it comes to handover, the government requests you to do the handover in documents and archived. It doesn't make any sense. So, but however, these things exist because of security reasons, because of data protection, etc. And these kind of things that need to be updated. And more importantly, people's mindset needs to be updated as well.
Yeah. So we can say, based on these discussions, the main outcome, this could be the foundation you mentioned, could be the mechanism for creating this alignment in both smart cities and industry initiatives in relation to digital transformation. So back to you, Stephanie. So people is a maybe common factor, core asset for smart cities initiatives, and for also digital transformation for businesses. So we can say that they are also core, based on the discussion today and other panel discussions and presentations, they are core for successful digital transformation journey. So the smart city topic cannot be only considered based on technical aspects or disciplines. So people are at the heart of the digital transformation process. So please, can you share your thoughts on how smart cities initiatives can support businesses in issues related to change and talent and skills gaps? So it's common issues for businesses. Do you think smart cities can help with that? Can support the businesses and overcome these challenges?
So smart cities themselves are, almost like a foundation for businesses to build on. And, they're areas where people live, learn, work, and play, right? They are there and they have the opportunity to create digital ecosystems that can support both the physical and virtual opportunities to do this. And with regards to people, obviously, we're talking about the working and the learning. So with the learning, there can be a push, and we do see this in Singapore, and we do see it in some other cities where residents are encouraged to have the ICT or the digital skills. Their levels of education are supported. There's a strong support for STEM in the education system. These are some of the areas that can support organizations so that they're able to have high level of and quality of employee. When we look at, and we did a survey with IDC, and we looked at the skills that are required by logistics and manufacturing organizations, and they're slightly different, but, the top three tend to be around digital literacy and the ability to work with data sets and data science. And they're two big skills that organizations are craving for at the moment. The other one is the ability to collaborate with and across groups. Now, cities are supposed to be able to help with bringing a high degree of, or high quality of social and human capital. So when we look at social capital, and I'm drawing on a definition by the OECD here, is we're talking about shared norms, values, and understandings that facilitate cooperation with or within or among groups. And if we want to have that ability to collaborate within and across groups, the city has almost a responsibility to try and encourage this sort of collaboration and tolerance and the ability to communicate and gather and interact with each other so that we're able to actually take this into the workforce. So, spaces and ways that the city allows people to collaborate in their, work, play, live and learn, that is actually going to be a foundation that they can then take into the workplace. It's going to actually allow them to deliver on some of those skills. So yeah, cities do have the role to lay that foundation to do so, and organizations will benefit as a result.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe I'll ask you now, Anas, as an academic, reflecting on what I reflect on what Stephanie said to you. So in terms of skills and knowledge, obviously we talk about education, right? Do you think part of a smart cities plan, education is considered to revisit or rethink about what they deliver, and if they need to change, to adjust to these changes? Is this part of the smart cities plan?
Well, education is definitely something that one of the pillars of the framework of smart cities. But I'm just thinking about it from a practical perspective. Has it been taught, or has it been? We see a lot of industries in the programs and courses at university. They teach AI and IoT and etc. And that's something that's becoming quite a norm now. And a lot of students, or the next generation and people that coming back to do their masters or PhD and working in industry, they know these kind of stuff and they're well aware of it. But I'm just thinking about it, since you've asked the question from a government perspective. Is there some sort of there is education in terms of what is smart cities and etc. But I think there's a lot more effort that needs to be done in terms of collaborating between governments, industry and academia to put some sort of right understanding together in terms of smart cities, and making sure the education sector can really help with that. At the moment, we see a lot of initiatives under the framework or the pillar within the framework of smart cities within education. We see a lot of education sector institutes like Harry-Watt University changing a lot of things to be as smart, whether it's the buildings need to be as smart, what's the way we educate, whether we allow people to make sure that they have the right experiences within the campuses and etc. So you do see the institutes in education as within the industry, if you want to call it, are following or are going towards the smart city aspect. But to answer your question, do we have some sort of platform or clear vision of what the smart cities or government wants to do within the education sector, or what they supporting? There's not much, not that I'm aware of, not on the top of my head. Maybe I could be corrected, but I believe that we've highlighted before that the education sector is one of the sectors that really needs some support. It's been a little bit neglected, and I think it might have an issue, because really, if we want to have a long-term goal towards achieving smart cities, we need to make sure that the new generation can come in, not to join the journey, but actually to come and innovate, to change it. Maybe we just touching the iceberg at the moment, the tip of it. There's a lot more to smart cities, and maybe bringing in the new generation that has lived and breathed smart cities can come up with innovative solutions that will enhance the concept of smart cities.
Yeah, that's very interesting to me to know, because I think this clearly shows the gap in the when I talk, for example, on job market and how to create this alignment with industry. If this is already missing, it's really difficult. This could be really a key mechanism to enhance this alignment. Not only that, to support actually both smart cities and industries to fill the gap of these skills, and talents needed, because definitely this needs to be addressed as part of the plans for the smart cities, and will support both businesses and countries for a smart cities plan as well. Thank you for this. I just would like to invite the audience, if they have any questions, please add to the question answer. and we are happy to answer your questions. So back to you, Walid. One of the major challenges for facing for businesses which they face to achieve the objectives of digitalization, or even to start their journey, is related to the digital maturity level of the business. Okay, and this may be something they don't consider even when they try to implement, and could be challenge, could be constraint, could be reason for failure. So digital maturity or readiness of businesses is important. How do you evaluate the maturity level of the smart manufacturing and supply chain in the MENA region? Or if you would like to keep it to UAE context, that's fine. What needs to be done to enhance their digital maturity and readiness, considering the context maybe of the smart cities? You can add your answer in general, and if you want to connect to smart cities, will be helpful.
I would like to actually add something that we were listening to Dr. Anas and Stephanie. It came up to my mind. I mean, this pandemic has really opened up our mind. I mean, nobody ever thought that kids would be learning from home. So, and if you look at that, look at the amount, the level of the pollution, how much it went down. Look how many less cars on the streets. We allowed people to work from home. In my opinion, this is smart cities, to allow the people and to actually empower employees that do not have to be sitting in an office. We don't need to be sitting in an office with 100 people. We can sit in an office with 20 people, and the remaining are working remotely. In my opinion, this will all allow us, even it will allow the people to work. They don't have to live in Dubai. They can live, let's say, outside the city, in Alain or in Hatta, and they can still be delivering the same work. Just to compare that with the schools, that all the schools have, we never even thought of children sitting at home and learning. But for that, we needed to provide them good bandwidth of internet. We needed to provide the teachers who are able to do that. We need to provide all the infrastructure to do that. And now it's the same goes to the industry. In my opinion, the industry, if all the industries will work together, collect the data from all the sensors and all the manufacturing processes that we have together, we will be all able to deliver a better solution. And then we can integrate one to another, and the physical and the virtual worlds will interlink and transform the industry completely. And this will also work at the same time in schools, it will work in industries, it will work in universities. As Dr. Anna said, a lot of people were doing their MBA online. Why not today? This is, in my opinion, this is a foundation of a smart city.
Okay. So would you like me to? So now, can you answer the question? Would you like me to repeat the question about the maturity level and readiness for business? This was really helpful contribution on the other point. But now, when we talk about maturity levels and readiness of businesses, this is a challenge for them to implement the digitalization or to succeed in their journey. So how do you see the level of this digital maturity for businesses, in focusing obviously on manufacturing and supply chain in the MENA region, or if you prefer to cover only UAE, that's fine. What needs to be done to enhance their digital maturity, considering smart cities? How smart cities can support this to enhance it, digital maturity? Or maybe you can add other aspects if you want.
Again, as I say, we need to provide the infrastructure and we need to provide the approvals that, yes, if we do, if let's say a company starts working on delivering projects, we don't need to do all the paperwork, as Dr. Anas has just said. We need to provide the infrastructure, and the maturity in general industry and in general, let's say, government, to accept these foundations, and we need to provide them also with all the infrastructure. So, in my opinion, as a manufacturer of goods, we cannot work if we don't have all the data. We cannot deliver to the people and to the right people if we don't have the data. I'm not an academic. I cannot answer for Dr. Anas, and all we know is basically our interface to our customers. We are fully digital, but look at it now. You still don't have an airway bill, an e-airway bill until today. I mean, that's a shame. We still, everything is delivered by paper. So there's a lot of hurdles that have not been come over yet. And if the governments don't say, okay, that's it, enough, we give them a deadline and say, e-airway will, not a single paper will be printed from now on, that is at least a good advance. But as long as they keep it open, as long as there's no real deadlines and real guidance, somebody must say, that's it, we have to start from this day. If you got my point.
Okay, Stephanie, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was going to say, well, one of the key things, and this is in, the Middle Eastern region generally, is that a lot of the digital initiatives that do happen are quite siloed from a corporate perspective, from a company perspective. So, where you do see pockets of innovation, the key to Industry 4.0 is the integrational aspect, where you're starting to, join together capabilities across the organization and going beyond the organization if we're bringing that sort of thinking. One of the struggles that I think happens with organizations, and our numbers point to, I think it's somewhere like about 62% of organizations in the Middle East are actually still doing their innovations from a siloed perspective without looking at it holistically across the organization and how they're going to join things together. Now, there may be capabilities that are available in the city, through the use of innovative, transportation, being able to do routing and these sort of things that you can actually start to take advantage of that. But organizations within themselves need to start innovating to the point where they need the city to move with them. And that's where I go back to that point where, cities and industry can be quite symbiotic in that they do have a relationship with each other that if the business demands it, the city will build it. Otherwise, they risk losing their leadership capabilities. And if the city then builds it, then the business needs to keep up. And so there does need to be that double, working forward in tandem. But businesses need to do it, accept that they do have a responsibility with that. And that starts with looking at their own environment holistically.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question for the panel, Shireen. The time is running very short, but I had a question for the panel because you both mentioned, all of you mentioned compared Singapore and UAE for the advancements in the smart city structures. But it's also true that in both Singapore and UAE, there's been a very strong drive by the public sector, by the government, to lead industry, and therefore an industry then followed. What happens to countries where there isn't that impetus for lead by the public sector and government? How fast and how quickly you think they can catch up in this integration and moving forward?
From my perspective, we're seeing that governments are starting to lead, right? We are seeing the programs starting to come out of Indonesia, out of Vietnam, out of the Philippines, out of Malaysia. But there does, like I said, there does need to be that ability for businesses to actually want to lockstep, and they've got to see some benefit from it. Where there is reluctance is to put their foot down and say, we are going to EBOLs, right? Or we are going to some sort of, and they do have to mandate that in order for that just to kick off. Right. But there are organizations in many parts of the Middle East and in Asia that are starting to do that, and the government is realizing that this is the way of the future. I can point to a glove manufacturer in Malaysia, Hardalega, who are, they've had their own issues, but from an innovation perspective, they're world leaders, and they are dragging the industry kicking and screaming along with them. It does need to be done in lockstep, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Steph.
To add to that, John.
If I could ask you to wrap up, we were just sorry, Dr. Anas, you wanted to say something?
I was just going to add really briefly. If you're referring to digital transformation, then the companies and industries are already doing digital transformation and innovations. But if the question is about smart cities, there's a lot of initiatives that need to come from the government to allow for that to happen. Right. But digital transformation do exist within industries.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was an interesting discussion. I would like just each of you to tell me the top priority for smart cities initiative and digital transformation for business. What should be the top priority for them to enhance their success? One top priority for both, at public level, at industry level. So, Stephanie.
I think that governments need to start mandating digital capabilities in order from an information perspective, right? There's always going to be the physical aspect of smart cities, but the governments need to mandate that. From a business perspective, they need to look at their businesses holistically and start looking at where they can actually take advantage of some of the initiatives that governments are doing and support them. This doesn't happen in isolation. Everything needs to work together.
Yeah, this is a good point, the interdependency. Yeah, Walid?
I would say for the industry, we need to interface and share the data. This will help a lot. As far as government, they need to give deadlines and they need to help achieving them, not just give deadlines and not give the infrastructure for them.
Okay, Anas?
From a government perspective, the priority initiative should be to set the right strategy in place, which will incorporate what Walid and Stephanie pretty much mentioned. And from an industry perspective, it's to really push in terms of innovations and look into what the customer experience, and then drive from that.
Yeah. If I can add, I just add for both. They need to work at this strategy level and to consider this at more strategic level, and this will impact the implementation at different levels as well. Thank you very much for the wonderful discussions, insights you shared today, and I believe our topic in this panel was quite unique, bringing the public level. So I think we hope we added value to the audience today, and we hope to see you in the future event. Thank you very much, and thank you for the audience for listening. Thank you, Joe. Back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shireen, and thank you all the panel for your very, very insightful discussion, very serious considerations, and some thought for the future. I hope we can continue this discussion maybe next year in Dubai when we have a live audience and a live program. Shireen, thanks again for leading it, for moderating it, and for a well-prepared panel. Thank you all very much.